Hi guys, welcome to this IELTS presentation. My name is Niels. Some of you might know me as Cornelius, and today my task will be to inform you about the International English Language Testing System and specifically the tools, strategies, maybe tips that we can use or that students can use in order to gain success in the exam. The four parts of IELTS, I will go into detail about all the four parts. They are listening, reading, writing, and speaking. Of course, just to give you a little bit of a breakdown of the four parts, in listening, you have 30 minutes to complete 40 questions. In reading, you have 60 minutes to complete 40 questions. And in speaking, you are involved in conversations or in a monologue for around 11 to 14 minutes. We will look at individual tasks that need to be done in all of these four sections, and we will give you some tips and strategies in order to assist students, or if you are a student, to be able to complete this test successfully. If you know beforehand what will be required from you, then of course you can prepare accordingly. In this slide, we will look at the question types. There are 10 main question types that are asked in the IELTS test, and they are, of course, labeling a diagram to give information about some visual picture, to scan and identify for information, to find specific keywords, to find specific words that you need to complete. Then, of course, sentence completion questions, where they give you the first part of the sentence and you need to give the second part that makes sense or that are connecting to the first part. Notes, table, form, or summary, or even diagram completion questions, where you have to fill in specific words for the sentence. Then you have the yes, no, not given, or true, false, not given questions. The difference between the two is for true, false, it is factual information that you must say, is this available in the passage? Is it not available in the passage? If it's not, then it's not given. And if it is the opposite effect or it's something different, then it's given in the passage. If it clashes with that, then of course the answer will be false. And then of course the yes no is more the opinion of the author that they test whether the student understand, is this opinion a point that the author is making, or is it maybe something different than what the author is saying, or don't they, if they don't find any information in the text, then of course that will be a not given answer. Then we have classification questions. I will handle that next. I have a specific slide for that, because this is something that's sometimes difficult for students to understand and even for teachers to explain. Then we have matching questions, where you match between a statement of a person and whether the statement is found in the text or not, or which statement is he actually making. Choosing headings for paragraphs. In reading, this question is quite prominent every time actually it is asked in an IELTS test, where you have to give an appropriate, let's say, heading for paragraph. And then we have short answer questions, direct questions, where they just ask you a question and you answer in the amount of words that they require. And then, of course, the last one, which you might not be able to see, is multiple choice, just to choose the correct answer according to the choices that are given. So as I said, I want to go through the classification questions just a little bit, because they are sometimes difficult for students to comprehend and for them to find the correct answers, of course, also in the process. This one gives you an example. Classify the following statements referring to three people, the names are stated there, and which response is appropriate to the three persons. If you look through questions 1 to 5, uh, each of these statements will be said or will be referred to a specific author or a specific person within the article. And you need to find the statement and link it to who has said it. or who has proposed this particular point. Now we go to a bit of detail of the four parts of the test. And of course, they are listening, reading, writing, and speaking. So let's have a look at them. Listening is the first one. Great, let's move on to the IELTS listening tasks. We have four tasks that are set in the question paper. Each have their own recording, and students need to complete, of course, specific types of questions on the listening that are played to them. Of course, a recording one is a real life situation, maybe a social setting where two people will speak, and the student in the IELTS test will have to complete certain information regarding that conversation. In recording two, one person will do a monologue, and he will maybe explain something, and answers needs to be given on what this person is saying. And recording three, in an academic setting, this is in a school, college, or university environment where two or three people will be in a conversation, and the alt student need to get answers from what the three people have said. And the last recording is, of course, like a lecture from a university professor or from a college, lecturer that will give information regarding an academic topic, and questions will be posed around that. Of course, the accents that are used in listening are varied, and it can be British, it can be Australian or New Zealander, which is 80% of the time that they use these three nationalities to handle the conversations or to handle the monologues. And then the other 20% is mostly American speakers that will do the audio. It might be other nationalities also, like Indian or maybe Chinese, but believe me that clarity for native speakers should be able to identify exactly what is said in the conversation. But for students that are non-native speakers, it might be a bit more difficult to understand full conversations, depending on your level, of course. Good, let's look at the tips and strategies for the IELTS listening exam. IELTS listening is, of course, the first part of the IELTS exam. There are four recordings in listening, 10 questions each, and students need to identify the keywords in each of the questions in order to maybe match them with the audio and what is said by the speakers. This set of questions, of course, need to be checked out before the recording even starts, and students will get some time to go and check out the questions, maybe to circle the keywords and to try and understand what the question actually asks. So when the tape starts playing, of course, students need to be ready. They need to listen closely and identify the best possible answer for each of these questions. They will get some time in between, the parts to go and check this next set, and they will also have to check the answers that has already been given. My one tip is not to spend too much time on uh, answers that you've given already, but rather to take the time and check out the next set of questions. Let's now continue to part two in the IELTS exam, which is reading. Important, spend no more than 1 minute in answering one question. You need to have time, of course, to check your answers at the end. You need to have time to read and try and find the answer. And then you need to, of course, also transfer your answers to the answer sheet. So this all takes a little bit of time out of the 60 minutes that you have for the reading. And just to refresh your minds, there are three parts to reading, and there might be even more than one article within each part. So it is highly important that you look at the question number and then just spend 1 minute on that particular question. Good, some more helpful tips on reading. What is important to know is that when you want to answer a set of questions, the first part of the text will most probably answer the first question. That's not always the case, but most of the time this is quite applicable and it happens this way. So in reading, of course, you do not write down your own answers, you do not speculate, you do not make assumptions and just answer according to your own opinion. You will find the exact answer in the text, and you must write it down exactly like it is stated in the text. Of course, there are multiple kinds of questions. Where it is multiple choice, you just need to write A, B, or C. Where it is yes or no, you write the yes or you write the answer no. This refers to, of course, free answers, like straightforward questions that you need to answer in this particular words, or maybe writing or filling in words with sentence completion answers. So these answers that I'm referring to is the ones that you need to write down exactly as they appear in the text. If it is a set of maybe words that you need to write down, just note that it must also be grammatically correct if it is completing a sentence or if it is a fill in answer. If it is note completion or maybe diagram labeling, then of course you don't have to write a full sentence to answer a particular question. Of course, there is in reading also the requirement to answer no more than a particular amount of words. So if the question says no more than 2 words, then you have to use either 1 or 2 words and not more than that. Otherwise, your answer will be incorrect. So if you answer these questions again, as I said in the previous slide, number in the text the place where you found a particular answer. Of course, there can also be a summary that you need to write particular words in or phrases. The summary will be given to you maybe with gaps, and you need to write, of course, from the text the identical words in the answer. And this can stretch from beginning of the text until the end of the text where they summarize what was said in that particular article. So it can be quite a tedious effort from students to find these answers, because they are not just following one another in one particular paragraph, but can stretch over a part of the text, or it can stretch over the whole text. So that makes it a bit more difficult to answer these kinds of questions. What is hidden maybe behind my video is check if all the information that is in the question is available in the text. So everything that is stated in the question, you must be able to find that in the text in order to make that answer true or false or yes or no. This is mostly applicable to these kind of questions where they refer to check that everything is available in the text. Now we go to the third part, which is writing. Of course, again, general and academic are split with certain of the parts of writing, which I will discuss next. Next, let's identify the differences between the IELTS writing general and the IELTS writing academic. There are no differences in part 2 of IELTS academic and general. However, part 1, vastly different. For general, you need to write a letter. It can be formal or informal, and you will give information about a specific problem, ask for something, describe something in that particular letter. In part 1 of academic, you need to write a report about a chart, a diagram, a graph, a table, maybe even a map. And this can be a bit more technical than just writing a letter. We will go through some details of these and see if we can uplift your knowledge on how to cover the first task of the IELTS writing. Before a student starts writing a letter, a report, or an essay, he or she needs to be aware of the criteria for the marking. These criteria consist of task achievement, coherence and cohesion, lexical resource, and grammatical range and accuracy. Now, what do these mean? For students to understand it is one need to simplify it, of course. Task achievement is about answering the actual question, presenting what you think about this topic. Coherence and cohesion is about making the essay flow, making the letter, structurally correct so that it starts with something, that it has some details in the middle, and that it ends well. For a task like task 2, writing an essay, of course, there must be an introduction, there must be body paragraphs, and there must be a conclusion, and it must be structured also correctly in order to achieve a proper mark in the IELTS exam. Lexical resource is using, of course, the correct types of words, maybe some uncommon words in order to describe a specific situation, or to report on some figures, or to give your ideas and opinion in an essay. Grammatical range and accuracy is structuring your sentences correctly and using all kinds of sentences, like simple sentences, complex ones, maybe sentences with the if clause, and then also passive voice and so forth. So there must be a range of types of sentences and a range of types of words that you include in those sentences, like words like the model should, could, can, would, and so forth. These are all part of the grammatical range, and of course the accuracy refers to, are the sentences structured correctly, and are they used in multiple ways in order to convey meaning and thought. This is quite a busy slide, which is part 1 or task 1 of the general, which requires for the student to write a letter, either informal, there's semi-formal also, and formal letters. You can look through these types of letters, what the question is, and the model answers, in order to get an idea of how students should structure the letters in the different formats. Here we have a look at academic writing task 1, where a report is required on a graph, a table, a chart, a map, or a diagram. To write a report on a line graph can be a daunting task for students. However, to make it simple, one needs to look at what is happening in the line graph and what are the figures and over which time period has this happened. Of course, the student needs to paraphrase the question first, which is the graph below shows the total value of exports and the value of fuel, food, and manufactured goods exported by one country from 2000 to 2005. This means he must put it in his own words, and this will be the start of his report. Then he has to report on where did the figure start, meaning what amount was applicable in the year 2000, and how did it move along until 2005. He doesn't need to report on every single aspect of the line graph, but just the important parts of it. Now, important is, of course, the start of it, what the trend was until 2002, which is like downwards, and after that, there was an upward movement until 2005. So he just needs to mention figures, he needs to mention the dates, and he needs to, of course, write an overview of what he sees is actually presented in this particular graph. And the same is applicable to the value of selected exports. When we go to a next type of question that can be posed in the IELTS exam, it is a bar chart in this case. And here the student needs to also paraphrase the question. The question, of course, is the chart give information about 2 genres of TV programs watched by men and women and 4 different age groups in Australia. And then it gives an instruction of what you must do with this particular information. That part, the first sentence, needs to be paraphrased by the student, and then he will start by giving information of the visuals within this particular question. These are the words that one can use to describe what happened in the line graph or in the bar chart. So if you want to describe something that moves up, the student shouldn't say move up, and repeat himself all the time. So you can use words like rise, climb, jump. Jump will be, of course, a sharp increase. And then to increase very sharply, you can say to increase rapidly. If it went up slightly, you can use slightly or slowly, or even gradually if it's a little bit of a higher up movement. And of course, the downward trends can be described by using these kind of words. You can go through this details, of course, and then handle them accordingly and report on the particular information in a good fashion. Another type of question that can be posed in the IELTS exam in task 1 of writing for academic is, of course, to write about a pie chart. Here you need to describe the causes of worldwide land degradation and the causes of land degradation by region. So both of these visual items must be described. So you should talk about the pie chart, and also it can be combined with a table like this one, and information regarding figures, percentages, and numbers must be included in your answer. Another type of question that can be posed in IELTS academic for writing is to talk about a map and the changes that has happened to a particular area. You will view that there are many changes that have happened to this island. There were really nothing except trees and a beach on the island, and due to development, of course, people have built a restaurant. They have built some reception area, and some housing is also on the island now. And they have a pier and some sailing boats there that can be used maybe for entertainment, where swimming also is now allowed on the beach. So these are all the elements that you need to uh, include in the report to write about the changes that has happened. Finally, I want to focus on a process diagram. Sometimes in IELTS academic writing part 1, students are required to write about what is happening in a picture. In this case, of course, the digger digs up the clay, and it ends with the delivery truck delivering the bricks to maybe the building site. In this case, students should use multiple tenses, but more specifically, the present simple tense and the passive voice. In this case, they can start with the digger digs up the clay and then move to passive voice, saying that the clay is placed on a roller. Also use passive, sand and water is added. And then maybe, just to change it a bit, the wire cutter cuts the bricks in even sizes, and then it is placed in a drying oven, which is also passive voice, and so forth. So this is an idea of how students should go about in writing about a process diagram. Now we go to writing task 2. Writing task 2, of course, requires for students to write an essay. When we look at the topics of an essay, it can be one of these that might be popping up in future exams, talking about the social media or education, employment, and so forth. And these are the hot topics of the hour when it comes to the IELTS test. Let's have a look at the types of essays that one can get in the IELTS writing exam. There are mainly 4 types, which is opinion, and discussion, and situation. In the opinion essay, of course, the student should give uh, his opinion regarding a particular statement. In a discussion, he must discuss maybe advantages or disadvantages of a particular situation. In the opinion and discussion essay, uh, there should be a discussion of 2 opinions that have been given to the student. The example of this one is maybe stating that some people believe that the ozone layer of the Earth is highly damaged by factory gases, while others believe that the Earth will heal itself and nothing bad can happen to the ozone layer. So in this case, of course, you need to discuss both of the viewpoints and then state what do you think is the correct one according to you. Of course, in a situation essay, it is all about problems and solutions or cause and effect, and they will ask you to state a problem about a particular situation and, of course, provide a solution for that. Maybe one example we can give is when a question comes about stating that in the world of today, uh, education no longer are just classroom based, but also within an electronic environment. So, what are the problems that can be caused by internet classes, and how can this be overcome? So, this can be what the student needs to write about in his essay. So, how to write an essay? Of course, there are certain steps how a person should tackle an essay. You need to analyze the question, understand it, and then paraphrase it in the introduction. So after that, he needs to make sure that he knows what he wants to write in the body parts of the essay. So of course, it's very important for the student to draft a quick plan before he starts writing so that he knows what to write in particularly the body part of the essay. So he can make a few notes about the points that he wants to discuss, with of course the reason why he says that and an example. So that is the basic structure of the body paragraph, is to say what he wants to say, then say why he says it, and then gives an example that supports, of course, his answer. In the end, a conclusion needs to be made of the main points that have been given in the body paragraphs, stated in maybe in a little bit of a different way, and then one can conclude with a strong statement at the end of this essay. The essential vocabulary that one must use in the IELTS writing exam are stated in this slide. Of course, it is important that students use various phrases in their answer to ensure that the examiner sees that they are competent in the language, that they are fluent, and this will, of course, bring them a higher mark. Giving your opinion, they should, of course, use different ways to express it, especially if they use, or give their opinion more than once in an essay. First time around, they can maybe say, my opinion is that, and the next time that they want to state their opinion, they can use words like, um, it is obvious that, or it would seem that, or it appears that. So they need to just replace the types of phrases that they use in within the essay. If they want to state the main point, they will use some of those words. You can go through them and just make sure that you use them if you are a student, and if you are a teacher, that you actually relate these ideas to your students. And then supporting points, for example, or something like that, you can use, or you can say furthermore, you can say secondly, or something like that. So use these kind of vocabulary. And then concluding your writing, this is like to write the conclusion. You need to state something that you are busy now with the conclusion, to say in conclusion that, or um, finally, or all in all, or something like that. So this will make your essay more academic of standard, and ensure that you get maybe a higher mark than just using basic vocabulary without concluding statements. Okay, now we go to part 4 of the IELTS exam, which is speaking. Speaking is generally regarded as the second easiest part of the exam, except for listening. Speaking tends to get higher marks than the other two parts, which is, of course, reading and writing. The speaking test, of course, is made up of three parts. The first part is the introduction, where the examiner will ask you personal questions about things that you are quite familiar with, like your hometown, your hobbies, your family. And then part two, you will be required to do a speech of about 1 to 2 minutes, and you will get 1 minute to prepare for the speech. And the last part will be something that is linked to the speech, but where discussion is necessary. And you'll have to give maybe opinions and what you think about a particular situation. So, how to handle speaking in the IELTS exam? There's one main thing that you need to focus on, and that is keep busy with English all the time. Speak English whenever you can. Make sure that everything that you do um, is English. Watch English programs, listen to English music, and write English. This will also help you with speaking because it will improve your fluency in the other skills, and they all work together to improve one another, so to speak. So the next thing that you need to, of course, state in the IELTS speaking exam is say what you think about this particular situation, especially in part three. It will ask you maybe what do you think, what is your opinion, what will happen, and in this case, you should use words that describe your opinion, just like you use in my opinion in writing. You can also say, in my opinion, it is really necessary for us to protect the environment. If maybe they asked you about something about the earth that is polluted or something like that. So, very importantly, make sure that you practice. Practice, of course, makes perfect, and practice is the only thing that will get you there. So, how do you get graded in speaking? Of course, earlier we referred to how a person get graded in writing, which was the vocabulary, the grammar, the task completion, and cohesion and coherence. In this case, of course, we still have the lexical resource, which is the vocabulary. We still have grammar, but because this is a speaking exercise, they will also listen to how you pronounce the words, what is the emphasis that you place on words, uh, how clearly you speak, and then also the fluency and coherence. Do you speak well? Is there a lot of hesitation or not? Uh, do you have statements that flow from the one to the other? So these are all the facts, or let's say the points that you need to consider in order to get a good mark in speaking. Fantastic. We've come to the end of this presentation, and I hope that you've learned a lot. And if you have any questions, please feel free to send them to me, and I will answer them gladly. And you can also make a comment to that effect, and then we can sort that out for you. Thank you.